Hey guys, what's going on? Steven back again, and I'm back with another Walking Dead video from the Thrifty Typewriter. So I'm continuing on with his retrospective series, which has been so much fun to watch, going through each season and just, kind of going through what worked, what didn't work, what, maybe they could have done differently and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been a blast. Looking forward to the rest of them. So this one here is season 6, the best of The Walking Dead. Season 6 was pretty damn good. There was a lot of really good moments in that season. So yeah, let's jump into the video and check it out. Here we go.
After all this time, we arrived to a season with very mixed results. A season notorious for fake-out deaths, controversial episodes, and having one of the worst cliffhangers ever put to screen. But this is also the season that has the most episodes in the top 10 highest-rated episodes list, the final episode that holds the three-way tie for the best episode of the show, and has two of the best plot lines in the show. Through all its faults, I still believe that The Walking Dead Season 6 is the best season of the show. But Thrifty, with everything you just said about it and all of its mistakes, how can this still be your favorite? Well, that's really what I'm going to go over in this video. I've pointed out a fair few faults that the other seasons had, and I'm probably going to be pointing out more than ever before in this video, but through a mix of the season's highs, the story that it tells, and personal preference, I'll be pointing out why this is my favorite season of the show as well. I'm sick, by the way, so sorry if I sound a bit different, but anyways, grab your flares, wonder who this Negan guy is, and Lucille our way into The Walking Dead Season 6.
Your stuff now belongs to Negan.
But starting off with episode 1, I really didn't like the whole black and white flashbacks aspect. Starting out real strong here, calling this my favorite season, and immediately going into what I don't like. But especially because this isn't real black and white, like they didn't shoot this in black and white film, they just took the scenes and dropped the saturation down to 0 like this. You can tell this is what they did because the trailer has scenes from the season opener that are in color. It just felt a little weird to me that the show didn't think its audience was smart enough to understand the difference between past and present. A little hint towards how this season in particular would treat its audience throughout the whole season. However, the story presented is really solid. We get to see the direct aftermath of Reg's death and how this affects each character, and more of the much anticipated reunion of Morgan and Rick. There are some nice callback moments these two share in their dialogue, but their reunion is a bit underwhelming. This is something I went over more in my episode analysis, which, upon watching this again, I actually think their reunion makes a lot of sense. These are two very different men at different stages in their life, and they knew each other at the beginning, but this doesn't necessarily mean that they owe each other anything in present day, especially in this kind of world. They don't turn into fast friends, Daryl doesn't get replaced as right-hand man, and for the most part, Morgan and Rick are just kind of around each other for most of this season. Does it make sense? Actually,
I guess
it
after
does,
things
but it's
happened in
still a bit
season 3.
disappointing. And because they didn't form any sort of emotional connection with each other, this spelled certain doom for a plotline down the road, but I'll get there, well, when I get there. Now, the actual main plot with the walkers that carries this entire first half of the season, and an additional episode after that, is one of the reasons why I love this season so much. Everybody always complains about how walkers are never a threat in the later seasons, but here they were still presented as a major threat. In fact, this is the last time that they are treated as a major threat. After this, walkers become obstacles in the road, not something detrimental to their safety in the world, even when walkers, for some reason, learn to climb and fight back. This is still the last true time that the walkers were seen as these horror monsters. I love the actual start, like the opening scene and the whole plan going sideways from the walkthrough of the plan. It proves that most of these people truly weren't ready for this mission, and now there's additional factors that they have to take care of, and I think this is far more interesting for the story rather than everybody being completely ready and the plan just not working. This way adds way more stakes to the story while still treating our characters with respect and not just making it seem like they had a bad plan. They had a great plan, but with the mix of it being too early and some other outside factors beyond their control, it forces them to improvise. When the opening scene came on, my girlfriend was like, how did we get here? Did we somehow skip an episode? Because it definitely feels that way at first glance with this
little
mini
time
jump and Morgan just being part of a group now. But then, of course, it goes back into the black and white, so that way we know that it takes place in the past. The second episode, JSS, shows us what happens back at home.
Yeah.
And this is one of my favorite episodes in the entire show. While the boomerang style of storytelling in seasons
it was a really
4,
good
5, and
episode.
6 get on some people's nerves,
Just the fight.
myself included. I think that this episode and this whole storyline with the horde of walkers actually gives a reason for it.
Yeah.
Knowing that the A-team is out there dealing with the walkers
The
and
B-team
the
is
B-team
back
is
at
at
home.
makes it the perfect
And now
time
you
for the
get
wolves to
the-
strike. Not that they
Well,
knew
what
that the
happened to the
majority
horn?
of the
Why is the
fighting
horn
force was
going
elsewhere.
off?
Maybe
You know,
they
who's
did.
doing that?
But writing-wise, it's perfect timing. We see how weak the Alexandrians really are and how some of them have taken on Rick's philosophy, but we also unleash the wolf in sheep's clothing named Carol. Some people don't like how Carol is able to just do all these amazing feats, and while it does get ridiculous as the show goes on, something like this is just because she's smarter than the enemy she's attacking. She puts on the wolf's clothing and blends in to attack them. She's not just going all John Wick on them. This also sets up the dynamic that she has with Morgan that would go on for the next 3 seasons. This episode just has perfect writing, and the circumstances around it are amazing. In episode 3, we cut back to where we left our characters in the first episode.
Yep,
The
as they're
horn
trying
is
to get
blowing, our characters are retreating and panicking, trying to figure out what to do next and what's going on. We also continue the trend of seeing the Alexandrians not ready for a mission like this, and our group having to simultaneously try and fix the plan while saving the others. And Rick understands this. He knows that the Alexandrians aren't all gonna make it back, and he even tells that to Michonne and Glenn, who don't really want to agree with them, but as the episode goes on, it proves that he was right. The episode starts off with like an entire group of people until they all split up, and a total of 3 people make it back to Alexandria. They try and fix the plan, but in that attempt, the characters make rash and personal decisions, and it doesn't end up fixing anything. We also get the end to the Glenn and Nicholas storyline, a storyline that I actually really like. This whole plotline shows us who Glenn really is at his core. He sees the good in people, and that sort of mindset can ultimately lead to your own demise in this world. Or maybe not. But this gave Glenn something to do in his time at the beginning of Alexandria.
At least to give him a storyline
away from Maggie. And they also kind of do this with Maggie, working with Deanna, but she also gets far less screen time than Glenn did. I have a lot of thoughts on this Glenn fake-out death, but I'll get to that a little bit later. The first 3 episodes of this season are what I believe to be the best 3-episode stretch in the entire show. Each episode just builds more suspense, and the stakes just get higher and higher.
They all kind of connect to each other.
The dynamics between the characters, the differences between our group and the Alexandrians, and how everything just seems to go wrong no matter what. If this had happened even just a month after Rick took over the place, everybody might have been more ready. Everybody would be more in tune with the plan, and all of this might have gone smoother. Even with the wolves attacking, if the Alexandrians were better prepared, I think most, if not everybody, walks out of this mission alive. So I was excited to see this momentum continue and see more of the stakes being raised. But then episode 4 didn't do that. Here's Not Here is a fantastic episode of The Walking Dead. We all wanted answers to the mysteries of Morgan's backstory and how he came to be the way that he is now, and the answers we get are great. Eastman is a fantastic character, but the issue with this episode is where it was placed. This episode is standalone and entirely skippable. I usually do skip it when I'm watching the first half of season 6. Part of me wants to re-edit this first half of the season into one long, like 3 or 4 hour movie, keep the momentum going and not cut away from it, take out Glenn's fake-out death, and maybe one day I'll do that. I'm not sure if I could share it without AMC coming for my head, but I feel like that would be a really fun project, and yes, that is my idea of fun. The 5th episode goes back to our primary storyline, but definitely slows things down. I do love Rick's arrival and his speech at the beginning of the episode.
They're gonna be back.
They're gonna be back.
But I can't imagine being somebody at Alexandria and having all these new people arrive and all these crazy, terrible things start happening. Like a week ago, they were living peacefully and had been for like 2 years, and now a ton of their members are dead. They're being forced to fight for their lives when they were seemingly fine until Rick Grimes showed up. In this slowed down episode, we get to see some minor character progress,
Where
like
Rick
the
goes,
continuation
chaos
of the feud
follows.
between Carl and Ron. It's either in this episode or an upcoming one that they fight, and it's truly one of the worst choreographed fights I've ever seen in my life. Catch up with the rest of the Anderson family, and if Jessie is a hairstylist, why does she give her son the Will Byers haircut? Like, what's the point of your mom being a stylist if you're still just gonna rock with this cut? There's a romance brewing between Rosita and Spencer. At the same time, a romance is forming between Abraham and Sasha. So I wonder if these two will have some sort of mutual understanding and breakup. And honestly, I actually think that Rosita and Spencer look like a nice couple, and she could have actually changed him into becoming a better character. But that didn't happen. Abraham and Rosita don't mutually break up, and this was the start of a trend with really all female characters in this show, but Rosita especially, where if a woman doesn't have a storyline, just pair them up in a new relationship. This is something I noticed watching the series this time around, and it happens over and over and over again. And the writer's treatment of Rosita is far and away the worst when it comes to this, but that's a rant for a later video. Everything setting up Rick and Michonne gets shoved way to the sideline in favor of Jessie, which I can see why they did that. I don't think their intention was to have this woman whose husband was just murdered in another love triangle with Rick and Michonne, but their scenes are cut back by so much that it's really noticeable they had to like separate them to further explore the Rick and Jessie romance, which might be a hot take here, but I actually really liked them. Maybe it's just because I'm a sucker for this reality TV style romance between them, but I thought that they had good chemistry. I liked the character of Jessie and who she was turning into, and I felt like she was going to be the comic Andrea replacement, which is probably exactly what they wanted us to think for a later bait and switch shocking moment. Episode 6 once again shows us the Scott Gimple boomerang storytelling at its finest, but this episode isn't actually all that bad. In retrospect, we get character development for Sasha and Abraham, we see the Daryl setup with Dwight, Sherry, and the entire Saviors arc, and I don't think that this episode gets enough credit for that. But I remember first watching this episode, I didn't care about any of this. I just wanted to see if Glenn was alive or not, and now that we're going on 3 weeks of this cliffhanger with no answer, I was starting to lose interest entirely. I still thoroughly believe that a lot of these episodes could have been condensed or combined for greater effect, but this episode also kind of brings a character arc full circle for Daryl, him wanting to go out and recruit people, and when he tries to recruit these people, they ultimately end up betraying him. But it does make me wonder what would have happened if Dwight just accepted this help in the first place. The beginning of episode 7, we return to the scene that Glenn died in for some reason. I don't know why they're making us relive this, it was so hard the first time. Oh wait, it was actually Nicholas on top of Glenn, so Glenn's alive? Glenn's alive, everyone! So, what was the point of this? This fake-out death actually doesn't do anything for the story other than maybe add some more stakes. But it's not like there weren't already sufficient amount of stakes to begin with. Tons of people have died on this mission. We find out that Maggie is pregnant. I guess it's to make us think about how terrible it would have been for Maggie to have this child without Glenn. And now that he's actually alive, we don't have to worry about that anymore. Wait a minute. Episode 7 is all about trying to keep Alexandria together. Literally, but also all the cracks are starting to form and people are starting to turn on each other, get angry with each other, which is pretty symbolic for where this place is as a whole when the wall falls. Episode 8 is probably the most underwhelming mid-season finale in the entire show. It doesn't have a shocking death for the sake of a shocking death, so I guess that's a win. Deanna's death is quite symbolic because the Alexandria she envisioned died this day right along with her, so it's sort of a captain goes down with its ship ordeal. But a lot of the plot lines were still being set up, so they couldn't get the payoffs needed to happen in this episode. We didn't get the payoffs because we spent so many episodes covering only one storyline, and not in the way that was needed like in JSS. But then we get the first official mention of this new villain guy named Negan. It's a strange name, but this is another reason why this is my favorite season of the show. I think the whole build-up to Negan is excellent. I remember the whole time around this season airing and just how much all the comic readers were hyping up Negan and all the different casting rumors for him. I think that the Saviors themselves, and as they're presented in the back half, are honestly really menacing. They were such...
Why am I drawing a blank?
Were hyping up Negan and all the different casting rumors for...
Yep. I was definitely on board of Why am I drawing a blank on his name? I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on his name. But yeah, I was, I don't know, I was kind of like on board, with him playing Negan. I still wouldn't mind seeing like just like a clip or something of him. What would he have looked like dressed up as Negan? And if he just did like some of the lines, from the lineup or something like that, just to see, all right, what would it have been like? I did hear rumors about him too. What is it, John? I think it's John something. John Hamm. I did hear rumors about him too, but not too much. But Henry Rollins. There we go. Yeah, I still would have loved to have at least seen what he would have looked like. Although I hear one of the reasons is he's, I guess, not very tall. So I guess it would have looked a little weird having, this big imposing villain being shorter than like Rick, because I don't know how tall Rick is. But yeah, you gotta have someone a little bigger to be like, yeah, Rick, you're mine, and not be like, yeah, Rick, your stuff belongs to me. Yeah, like really, like, yeah, I guess I kind of get it, but I don't know. I still would have liked to have seen at least Henry Rollins and like the get up and just say like a few lines just to see what it would have been like. Not knocking, Jeffrey Dean, still great, but yeah, I still would have liked to have seen Henry Rollins at least.
I think that the saviors themselves, and as they're presented in the back half, are honestly really menacing. They were such wild cards. You never really knew what they were going to do or say, and this unpredictability actually made them pretty scary in a way that was lost later on. Now on to the episode No Way Out. The episode that should have been the mid-season finale, but they wanted to give people a reason to come back after the break, so it wasn't. This is the last of the 3 episodes that are tied for the highest rated of the series, and the more I watch this episode, the more I start to feel like it's a little overrated. The bulk of this episode is actually having to do with Denise and the wolf, a storyline that I feel is alright, but I don't buy that the wolf was changing into a good person whatsoever. It's the last 20 minutes or so that make this episode as highly rated as it is,
to the rescue.
And I think all of this is done incredibly well. The Alexandrians coming together to fight is really impressive and symbolic. The fall of the Anderson family is done very well and is very tragic.
Them all swinging
but I
weapons.
do think this episode is the worst of the highest rated episodes. It's still a great episode. I'm not saying it's bad in any way, but just not as good as the other two. Also, with this being the last episode that is this highly rated, in some ways it makes the show all downhill from here at this point onwards, which isn't that great considering we're only about halfway done with the show. The next world is a fun episode. There's not a lot of high stakes, and I think it's a good palate cleanser from the previous episode and the whole previous storyline.
Yeah, that was
a fun one. We also meet
one.
Jesus, which sets up a whole new world, and seeing more of the Rick and Daryl dynamic is always welcome. This is, of course, the first episode when Rick and Michonne first kiss and other stuff, and after rewatching this, seeing all the hints and clues leading up to it, I think this is a very earned moment. I remember when I first saw this, I thought it came out of nowhere, but I couldn't have been more wrong. The hints are literally there, like, from their first meeting. From an audience perspective, we saw far less of the Rick and Michonne dynamic this season, but we did see that Rick has come far enough emotionally to be ready to see someone else. In Knots Untie, with the amount of focus on Abraham, it almost seemed like this was the episode he was going to die in. And going back to what I was talking about earlier with The Walking Dead and its treatment of female characters, let's talk about Sasha. Sasha just went through a whole storyline about finding a new purpose in life. She lost her last boyfriend and then her brother and wanted it all to end, but she continued on. So what can they do with her character now? Let's just find her a new love interest with Abraham. Abraham already has a love interest? Well, let's forget about her, and then eventually we'll just find her a new love interest too. The Walking Dead didn't really know what to do with female characters other than make them love interests. I always talk about how I don't like the character of Rosita very much, and it's mainly because of this. But that's kind of what it boils down
wasn't
to.
too bad.
Maggie and Carol are honestly the only ones with a concrete storyline about something else other than being a love interest. Maggie starts to become the leader of the hilltop, and that changes everything. Carol does become someone's love interest, but it's not her primary storyline, and the reality of everything she's done in this world just comes crashing down on her, which makes for an interesting storyline, I guess. But even Michonne from this point forward kind of just gets designated to Rick's love interest. Anyways, in this episode we hear more about this Negan guy and his group of people called the Saviors. Rick offers to take them out because they seem like an issue, and our group has never really come across another group of people that they can't deal with, so why not? But they've also never really gone on the offensive before.
Yeah,
and this leads me to my absolute favorite episode in the series, Not Tomorrow Yet. I've talked a lot about this episode
when they go after the governor to rescue Glenn and stuff. That was kind of like
and polarizing episode. A long time ago, I made a video about how this is the episode when our group became the villains, and some people agreed. Some people said it was hard to root for our characters after this episode, and some people say that the ends justify the means. And I absolutely love all the conversation and debates surrounding this episode.
Take them out before they take you out.
One thing is absolutely certain in this episode: our group does something that they've never done before: attack another group first. And no, those bikers stopping Daryl, Abraham, and Sasha on the road doesn't count, because that was also in self-defense. And this episode changes the course of the entire rest of the show, for better or worse. I find it very interesting how Morgan is against this attack because he thinks that all life is precious and that no one is ever too far gone, so he starts building a cell. Just an interesting decision, not at all something I'm going to bring up later. This whole episode has stakes that feel very real, and like this is building up to something big, and that's because it is. We see that while not everybody wants to go through with this, they understand that it's the best course of action that they have to take, and in a lot of ways they trust Rick and what he thinks is best. So if he thinks that this is the best course of action, they're gonna take it. This episode is brutal, and in some ways pretty hard to watch. Even our characters hesitate before fully going through with this plan, but as a firefight breaks out, it proves that our group was right and they could take these people on with no casualties. Which is a little strange. This whole build up to these saviors and this is what happens,
this
just
is
seems a little too easy. The next episode, The Same Boat, shows us a different side of the saviors, and also the toll that this life and this lifestyle has taken on Carol and Maggie. This is a great episode, shows us again how smart Carol and Maggie are, and overall I don't really have anything bad to say about it. Twice as Far is guilty of giving a character a spotlight just to kill them. That character being Denise. I've mentioned this a lot now, but The Walking Dead became notorious for doing this around this time in the show, but her death is incredibly shocking and all around tragic. It also sets up a rivalry between Daryl and Dwight, and this definitely continues on, but this is also easily the most intense confrontation and the best scene they have, and it seems to carry the most weight behind it. It again makes the Saviors a pretty menacing force because of how many of them there still are. Now, Carol leaving feels kind of strange and forced. She didn't have any issues with killing or this life in general up until a few episodes ago, and it very much feels like this was needed just for our characters to all leave and go search for her. Maybe people feel differently and this feels natural, but this is also why the reason the episode East is so strange, because I just don't buy into this version of Carol. This episode also completely reinforces how disappointing the Rick and Morgan reunion was this season. There was so much build-up throughout Season 5, and it was super highly anticipated. They marketed the whole season around these two, and this is maybe the third or fourth scene that they're in together. They're just two very different characters, and they aren't really friends. Take out their history, and Morgan's really just like Rosita or Eugene in terms of how close he is
Two
with
very
Rick.
different opposite
ends. This episode
ends.
just gives you the feeling that something bad is coming, and with everybody going out on their own personal agendas, it feels a little contrived, but you're also on the edge of your seat because you're just like yelling at your screen, telling everybody to just go home. It's almost worse when you know what comes next and how easily it could have been avoided had Daryl and Carol just stayed at Alexandria. Last Day on Earth is a strange episode. It's super low rated, but the actual episode itself isn't bad at all. This is actually one of the most successful episodes in the series in terms of what they were trying to do. We start the episode with Rick's mindset. Here, there's only a few saviors. There might be a time in the future to do some battle, but they've
miss
got
him
this.
too. He was great.
Oh, actually, there's quite a bit of them now.
Yeah,
maybe we'll just
come on. This
turn
was
around
actually really
and deal
cool.
with this later. Wait a minute. How many saviors are there?
This was
we definitely
cool.
can't take this on now. The suspense.
Come on, you got to admit when you were first watching this episode, how cool that was. You know, seeing, oh look, there's like, you know, maybe 8 guys. Yeah, okay. Whatever. We'll go this way. Oh, now there's like 20. Uh-oh. Let's go back. Oh, now there's like 40. Uh-oh. You know, you can't tell me, you know, your heart wasn't like, you know, starting to pound every time you were seeing more and more after every single turn. I don't know. I still think this episode was good. I'm sure like a lot of people thought this episode was really good, minus the cliffhanger. You know, if that cliffhanger part wasn't there, I think this episode would have been rated a lot higher. Because, I mean, it was getting your adrenaline going. You know, everywhere the RV went and just seeing more and more and more saviors. I know I was.
And dread that builds as the episode goes on is terrifying, and it feels so isolating as it continues on, and there just ends up being more and more saviors. We know something bad is going to happen, but we didn't know how bad it was going to be. Everything about the entire ending scene is utterly amazing. Well, not everything, but the scene itself, seeing Rick absolutely terrified, is insane to see, and Andrew Lincoln's performance here is incredible. I can remember watching this scene the first time when it aired, knowing that one of these characters that I really cared for was about to die. I remember my heart racing and having like nightmares about this scene afterwards. This is honestly up there with one of the scariest scenes I can think of, which sounds strange because it's not really that scary, but it's how I felt. And then we get the cliffhanger, otherwise known as the moment that The Walking Dead truly died. This cliffhanger encompassed everything that was wrong with the show, the manufactured story beats, disrespecting the audience's emotions and intelligence.
I get it from AMC standpoint.
Out answers, all for the sake of ratings, and after the...
From AMC standpoint, you know, I get it. You know, this was the moment, you know, a lot of people were waiting for. The iconic moment. And you get everybody watching. I mean, you kind of pull the rug out from underneath them. Then you try to, you know, bring them all back to see, all right, what happens in Season 8, Episode 1. Season 7, Episode 1. You know, I mean, I get it from their standpoint, you know. But I mean, it just didn't... I mean, now I'm sure it's, you know, a lot better if you can just binge watch right through it and you don't have to wait, you know, 8-9 months for the next season to go, and you can just go straight through it. Probably a lot better now.
The very next episode, I think most people felt that was the nail in the coffin, and for all intents and purposes, who Negan really killed was you.
But
just as we had to wait to see who was killed next season, I'm going to wait to explain my full thoughts on the cliffhanger in the next video. So for those of you who still leave comments on the other video and say that it's a good cliffhanger, I'm going to tell you right now that you're wrong, and I'm going to die on that hill. This season has some very high highs. One of the highest rated episodes, 4 of the top 10 best episodes, 2 very solid storylines that are done really well, but there are also far more negatives about this season than any other season that came before it. The biggest downfall with this season comes down to one thing, and that's how it treated its audience like we were stupid. My girlfriend and I now have an inside joke whenever we watch something that's in black and white, and we're like, oh, this must take place in the past since it's black and white. And that stems from this season of the show. They didn't trust that we were smart enough to know the difference between the present day and what was in the past. They killed off Glenn, but didn't actually give us confirmation. Talked about him so much in the episodes afterwards. They didn't have Stephen Yeun on Talking Dead, which they always did with principal cast members that died. It wasn't shocking that he was alive. And the fact that they thought it would be tells me that they think I'm stupid. They didn't want to wrap up the first half of the season with an episode like No Way Out because they didn't trust that I was going to want to see what happens after that, so they gave me a bullshit episode like start to finish, in which basically nothing of importance happens, so that way I'd stick around for more afterwards. And if you didn't like that tactic in the mid-season finale, guess what? They did it again in the actual season finale too. Audiences are smart.
Yeah, because I'm sure if they did show, the full ending, people might not have came back, for season 8. Maybe, maybe not that high. Maybe it would have taken a hit. Glenn, Abraham both dying and stuff like that. It's like, ooh. Those two were my favorite, I don't want to come back for, season 7 anymore, so, yeah, that's probably why they did it too, well, look what just happened. Now you kind of want to see what else is going to happen the rest of the season.
But when you treat us like we're dumb, it doesn't really make me want to come back for more.
Right.
It's the sacrifice of art and storytelling for the business end of things. Ratings and profits, and this season emphasized that more than ever before.
There it is.
Kind of proves that what ultimately killed the show was its own popularity and how people behind the scenes wanted to capitalize on it. So how can I possibly think this is the best season after that rant? The season came out when I was a senior in high school. At this point, all of my friends were watching the show. We'd have Sunday night parties like it was the Super Bowl, and I have very fond memories watching this season. I also have a personal preference on the first half of the season with the herd of walkers.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of the back half of season 4, and that was another portion of the show that I really loved. And I liked the build up to Negan and how it really felt like something bad and big was coming. The season hits all the right notes for me personally and strikes all the right emotional chords. Whether that be because of the storyline itself or because it reminds me of who I was and where I was at that point in my life. The season has far more problems than any of the others that have come before it. I understand and recognize that, but with my own bias added in, this season is a 10 out of 10. It's the gold standard for me. When I think about this season, I don't think about all the bad things I mentioned. I think about how much I liked both halves. I think back on the memories I have watching it for the first time and how this was my favorite.
The Walkers in the first half, the Saviors in the second half.
And that rings true to this very day. What are your thoughts on season 6? Am I crazy for giving it a 10? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Special thanks to all my channel members. You guys are the best. I appreciate your support more than you know. And if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to leave it a like and subscribe for more content like this. I apologize for the lateness of this video. I'm still getting over being sick, so sorry if my voice was a bit off in this video.
Okay, so there we go. Season 6, the best season of The Walking Dead. Yeah, both sides, both halves of the season did have some really good stuff. You had the zombies, the walkers in the first half. You had the build up to the Saviors in the second half. What was it? No Way Out and stuff like that. It was still, really good. The build up to the Saviors was awesome. Yeah, that cliffhanger at the end. Yeah, that did kind of suck, but I mean, from AMC's standpoint, well, look how many viewers, we got, and if we show everything now, will they still come back, or, will it go too far? What happens? Maybe, let's do a cliffhanger, and then at least, bring those people back so they can see what happens and at least capitalize on, get one more squeeze, one more episode of 17, 18 million viewers out of that, because I'm sure that was probably a pretty hefty payday for that. It is what it is. I mean, yeah, watching it back then, yeah, it sucked, but, watching it now and stuff like that, we can just binge watch it and just go straight through, no waiting around and stuff like that. I'm sure it's probably, way better. Yeah, JSS, that was a really cool episode. Yeah, the Glenn fake out death was, pretty rough and stuff like that. I remember doing all the videos and, is it Glenn? Did he really die? Yes, no. Well, look at the way, what's his name fell on top of him and stuff, like Nicholas, fell on top of him and stuff, and look at where the walkers are, like reaching and grabbing and stuff like that. That's too high, where like his intestine should be, whoa, there goes my camera. They should be like reaching, lower for the intestines and stuff like that. And I mean, it was, it was fun to, make those videos and speculate and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, that did kind of suck, just to only do a fake out death, only to kill him several episodes later. Maybe something like that would have worked earlier seasons, maybe, not something you kill in the same season, I don't know. But yeah, there was a lot of, really good stuff. It does kind of stink, like you said, about like the female characters and stuff like that. But I'm sure it's going to be hard writing, trying to write story for all these different characters and stuff like that. All right, this character's got to do something, that character's got to do something, these two characters got to do something, and these one's got to do something, and this one's got to be doing something too. It's like, I'm sure it's, extremely difficult. But I do like his, thing with, Jesse
They did
and
that.
Rick.
I don't think they're into.
And if they were to become a couple and stuff like that, I think that would have been, like, interesting. Like, if she became, like, had they not, screwed up with Andrea, because Andrea would have been badass and stuff like that. But, they done goofed, It is what it is. But, I don't know, she would have been an interesting character. She would have been pretty badass, I agree with him on that. What game is this from? Is this one of the Telltale games? Yeah, it's gotta be. Man, I haven't played those in so long. Maybe I'll go back to them again, do a replay. The Dwight and Daryl stuff, that's still pretty cool. Wouldn't mind, seeing those two reunite once again. I mean, all this time has passed. I'm sure, both characters have changed and stuff like that. What will their interactions be? Man, there's so many things. There's so many things they gotta do. Like, I don't know, like a Dwight and Daryl reunion. Can you just imagine like a Dwight and Negan reunion after all this time? That'd be kind of cool. Morgan and Rick. I think Dwight and Sherry split up at the end of Fear, didn't they? I don't remember. But either way, all these reunions would be pretty cool. If we'll get any of those, who knows? Still want to see a, Daryl and Rick reunion, a Morgan and Rick reunion. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Who knows? Kind of seems like this, should have been something started right after, because, who knows what Dwight's actor is doing. He could be off on another TV show, and now it's, might be too hard to like get him to come back. Like, hey, you want to come back and be on the show? Sorry, I'm on like another show. I'm like a main character on like this TV show, so I don't have the time. So kind of missed out. Because all these other actors could be off doing stuff, and if you want to do a reunion show or something like that, a new Walking Dead show with all these other characters, well, hey, sorry, I'm off filming a movie. I can't be on the show right now. I'm on this TV show, so sorry, I can't come back. It's like kind of waited a little too long. But it is what it is. All right, so there we go. The Walking Dead Season 6, the best season of The Walking Dead. Yeah, I will say Season 6 was a really good season. damn good season. But let me know what you guys think. What did you guys think about season 6? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What did you think about the famous cliffhanger? Do you think that episode was good minus the cliffhanger? Just the RV just driving and seeing some saviors, some more saviors, a lot more saviors and stuff like that. Let me know. And do you think the cliffhanger was like just mostly like an AMC just trying to squeeze a little bit more cash out of whatever they could? Hey, this is the moment. This is like the biggest episode of the entire show. Let's see if we can squeeze a little bit more out of like the next episode. If we got like 18 million people watching the season 6 finale, maybe we can get another 18 million to watch the season 7 premiere and just kind of squeeze that money out, because I'm sure they were making bank back then with those numbers. And I mean all the sponsorships, I mean driving around to that Hyundai and stuff like that, all the products and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm sure they were making a lot of money, and I wouldn't be surprised that's why they did it, just to try to squeeze like another 18 million viewers out of like another episode. But let me know. So anyways, on that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button, that'd be awesome. And like I said, leave me all your thoughts and comments. What did you guys think about the video? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What did you agree with? What did you disagree with? Let me know. And on that, just stick around. More videos are on the way, and I will see you guys next time.